The sound of her heels hitting the tile stopped the second I said his name. "Tell Mark I said hi." It wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic. I didn't throw the newspaper, didn't slam the chair back like some second-rate soap husband. I just kept my finger on the same sentence I'd been rereading for the past 5 minutes, something about home prices rising again, and waited to see if she'd blink. She didn't, but her hand locked around the keys like they might disappear, still facing the door, not a word. "You left the car 2 blocks down," I added. "Again." She shifted. I heard the breath she held rattle in her chest. Still no words, no denial, not even a bad lie. Just the sound of the door opening, quietly, and closing behind her like she was hoping it wouldn't echo in her ribs the way it did in mine. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're listening and your gut is screaming, it's not paranoia, it's preparation. And if you're one of the 97% who listen to stories like this without subscribing, consider hitting that button. It helps more than you think. And yeah, it means the world to the team. Back to Diane. You ever watch someone drift out of your life while still making coffee in your kitchen? She'd been doing that for months. New clothes, new hair, suddenly cared about her abs at 54. Not for me, obviously. I already knew what she looked like before makeup. No, this version of her was for someone who didn't. Her phone would ping and she'd smile. Not at me, not at a joke, but at the dopamine rush only a man who isn't her husband can provide. And I noticed. I noticed everything. She called it her book club night. That's what she said when she dabbed perfume behind her ears and adjusted her bra in the mirror before heading out. Funny, none of the books she brought home ever looked read. But I stayed quiet. There's a kind of power in silence when it's strategic. And I had a lot of time to think while she was out reading, like how Mark, the guy she said was just an old college friend, suddenly started liking every Facebook post she made, even the ones she didn't tag me in, especially those. I didn't confront her. No screaming match, no whiskey-fueled monologue. I'm not interested in playing the wounded husband. I played that part once, back in '98 when she maxed out our second card on accident. I've retired that role. Now I'm the guy who watches, who listens, who waits, and who tracks little things, like how her car's GPS history led to a Holiday Inn 3 towns over last Friday, or how she started wearing red lipstick again, the one she said made her feel too flashy when I bought it for our anniversary 2 years ago. She made it easy. The day I saw the text on her lock screen from MB, I didn't even have to open it. "Can't stop thinking about last time," it said. I memorized it, line for line, then put her phone down exactly where it was and poured myself a scotch. I wasn't angry, just refocused. It's wild how clear your thoughts get when someone thinks you're oblivious. Like, suddenly, you realize how much leverage you actually have when you're not shouting. I started going through our finances, noticing which accounts were joint, which weren't. Started quietly removing my name from bills I didn't need to be tied to. Paid off a few things, shifted a few others. The house? I'd been the only one paying the mortgage for a decade. She didn't even know the password to the portal. I made sure of that. She thought I was aging into background noise. I let her think it. So when she strutted out the door that Thursday, thinking she was living in some midlife rom-com reboot with Mark playing the sensitive lead, I gave her a little reminder that the extras don't stay quiet forever. And she froze. Her fantasy cracked a little that night, just a hairline fracture, but hairline fractures spread. The first time I saw Mark on her phone, it was innocent enough. A comment under one of her vacation photos from 2 years ago, some nonsense about how the lake still suits you. I remember squinting at the name, something vaguely familiar, like the background hum of a song you heard in college and forgot on purpose. Mark B. No last name, just the middle-aged abbreviation of something she once buried deep enough to seem harmless. At first, I let it go, because that's what you do after 27 years. You don't pick every scab. You give each other the benefit of the doubt, even if the benefit's been shrinking year after year. But the next day, she was humming in the kitchen while texting, smiling into her phone like she was 16 and pretending not to notice I was in the room. 3 days later, she asked me, casually, how much was in our main savings. "Just wondering," she said, thinking of redoing the kitchen. We'd just redone the kitchen 2 years ago. She hated projects, but I answered, calm, measured, and then I got to work. I opened a new email address on a library computer, nothing connected to our home Wi-Fi, clean slate. I downloaded some accounting software, basic but effective, and started pulling every joint account into my private archive. It wasn't about catching her, it was about knowing where the hell I stood before the storm hit. The credit cards were the first red flag. She'd opened a Macy's card without telling me, not huge, but curious. She'd charged a new coat and 2 dinner dates, neither of which aligned with our calendar. Dinner with Jen had supposedly been a potluck. Funny thing, potlucks don't cost $94 at a rooftop restaurant. I got deeper. Bank statements, Venmo, PayPal. A pattern started to form. Small amounts here and there sent to MB descriptions like fun night, gym fee, parking. Twice the same night I remember her coming home flushed, claiming the spin class ran long. She even apologized for missing the Netflix thing we'd planned. She didn't lie very well. She just assumed I wouldn't look. That's the danger of being the quiet husband. You're forgettable, which makes you invisible, which makes you powerful. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I read, I documented, I memorized. I dug through old yearbooks in the attic. There he was, Mark B., 2 years ahead of her at State. Tall, big smile, a theater major. I remembered him now, the guy she called too intense back then, the one who sent her poetry until she blocked his number. Apparently, intensity ages into soulmate when you're bored and he gets Botox. What Diane didn't realize is that while she was busy reliving her college crush, I was reliving something too, my training. Not military, nothing dramatic, just a long career in logistics and procurement. You learn how to track patterns, follow money, spot the missing parts of a shipment before the box even arrives. You learn that people always leave fingerprints when they're trying not to. I moved some funds, nothing illegal, just enough to remove liquidity. I rerouted my paycheck to a personal account, canceled a joint insurance policy and set up a new one in my name only. Quiet, subtle, surgical. Next came the home title. I knew she didn't read what she signed. She never had, so I refinanced. Shifted her off the paperwork with the help of a lawyer who owed me a favor from back when his furnace exploded and I lent him my HVAC guy. She signed the new packet after dinner one night while watching The Crown. I slid the papers under her wine glass. She didn't ask a single question. She never did. I started going to the gym too, but not the same one. Didn't want her seeing me. I needed the plausible deniability of sweat when I came home late. I dropped 15 pounds, swapped khakis for dark jeans, cut the beer belly. She never commented. One night, while she was out late at the gym, I drove by that Marriott off the highway, the one with the low lighting and the strange number of luxury sedans in the lot. Her car was there, same spot both Fridays that month. I didn't stop, just watched, logged the time, took a photo, drove off. Back at home, I made 2 folders, one marked if needed, the other marked when ready. Mark B might have been a new chapter in her rom-com reboot, but me? I was the plot twist, and I wasn't done, not even close. She told her sister over sangria, Greg's just stale, routine, same coffee, same slippers, same everything. Mark gets me. Karen, her sister, nodded, a little too enthusiastically, the kind of nod people give when they're tired of you venting about your marriage for years but finally smell scandal thick in the air. Karen always liked mess, especially if it came with rooftop cocktails and drama that wasn't hers. Diane laughed and leaned in closer. I'm thinking of leaving, not tomorrow or anything, but soon. Selling the house, maybe something smaller, minimalist, just me, yoga, and whatever. Whatever had a name, and a balding spot he tried to hide with mousse. Back at home, I was sitting across from a financial planner named Dale who smelled like old printer paper and asked 0 personal questions. My kind of guy. We were reviewing the asset document packet I'd built from scratch. Every account, every line item, every name that wasn't going to be on anything by the time the dust settled. It was meticulous, boring even, just like me. Your exposure's low now, Dale said, nodding at the monitor. If it goes to litigation, you're insulated. I just grunted, good, and added another tab to the spreadsheet. Meanwhile, Diane posted a photo, rooftop, wine glass in hand, sunset in the background. She was barely visible, just a silhouette with wind in her hair and that smug half-smile she saved for strangers and men who weren't me. There was no tag, but I knew the table. It was from a local steakhouse that used to be our anniversary spot before she discovered veganism via Instagram. The caption said, New chapters, no period, no punctuation, just floating like a flag over some vague battlefield where she imagined herself the heroine of her own reinvention story. I screenshotted it and dropped it into the When Ready folder. She still came home after those little adventures, still tried to play the role of wife out of muscle memory. She'd bake banana bread, ask if we needed more light bulbs, talk about retiring near a beach someday, all part of the script. But she wasn't reading it anymore. She was improvising. She bought new lingerie, left the tag on, like a rookie. She set up a new email and accidentally used it to order wine to our house. The confirmation came to our shared inbox. The name on the gift message? To Fresh Starts. You ever watch someone build a fantasy life like it's a Pinterest board, thinking the logistics of real life won't eventually kick in? That was Diane. She thought emotional excitement could float the rest. She started suggesting open houses for fun, claimed it was just a hobby, seeing what's out there. I let her talk, let her spin. Every mention of hardwood floors and skylights was a nail in the narrative she was building without realizing the foundation didn't belong to her anymore. She told Karen, "If I leave, I want it clean. No court drama. Just divide and go." She had no idea how clean it would be, because while she was sipping rosé with a man who wore too much cologne and called her D, I was finalizing paperwork she'd signed blindly. A few notarized docs here, a new revocable trust there. It was surgical. I didn't need to fight her in court if I could quietly walk away holding the keys to everything before she even noticed the door was locked. She imagined her escape plan like it was a rom-com ending. Mark waiting by the door, freedom, laughter, the sweet absurdity of middle-aged reinvention. She saw herself as brave, spontaneous, deserving, and sure, maybe she was. Who knows? But she forgot something crucial. You can't run from a marriage while still living in the house paid for by the person you're trying to escape. She thought I was standing still, but I was already halfway out. My version of escape didn't need a rooftop view or blurry pictures, just one good pen, one smarter lawyer, and enough patience to watch her dig her own escape tunnel straight into a vault I already emptied. She didn't mention it, not a word about Mark the next morning, no snide remark, no half-hearted denial, no attempt to spin it as a joke. Diane just poured her coffee in silence and sat across from me like nothing had happened, but her eyes never left me, watching, measuring, like she was trying to guess how much I knew and how long I'd known it. I flipped the newspaper without looking at her. 10 minutes later, I heard her footsteps down the hall, quicker than usual. She wasn't humming. That's how I knew she was nervous. Diane always hummed when she felt in control, some off-key Stevie Nicks thing that used to be charming when we were younger, before it became her unconscious power song. Now, just silence. I sipped my coffee and waited. From the bedroom, muffled curses. She came back in, holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. "Did you change the password to the joint account?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level. I didn't even glance up. "No, I just moved my half." A beat, confusion, then offense. "You didn't notice?" I added, folding the paper. "You can't just," she started, but I cut her off gently. "I can, and I did." She stormed into the office, slamming the door like she had a right to be outraged. I heard the clicking of keys, more cursing, then her voice through the wall, polite and tight. "Hi, yes, I'm trying to figure out why I can't access our business account." Pause, another pause. Then, "What do you mean the signer was changed 2 weeks ago?" Her voice cracked a little on the word changed. I stood in the hallway, silent as the drywall. I didn't need to hear every word. I already knew the script, because I wrote it. The rep was probably explaining how the new business account, which was actually just a rolled-over LLC we never used, had been reactivated under a single owner, me. Paperwork signed, notarized, finalized. I didn't need her signature. That was the beauty of the original registration. It had always been in my name alone. She just never paid attention to the legal differences between ours and yours. Her "you're boring" line kept echoing in my head. That's what she told Karen. That's what Mark probably heard when she curled up in his overcompensated arms and whispered about her neglected potential. But see, boring men are dangerous. We wait. We read the fine print. We understand timelines, filings, 90-day notices, asset shielding, quiet separations that legally start without a scene or a suitcase. When she walked back into the kitchen, she was pale, phone still in hand, no makeup, eyes tight. "You've been planning something," she said flatly. I raised an eyebrow. "What gave it away?" She sat down like her knees were suddenly unreliable. "You could have talked to me." "You mean like you talked to Mark?" Boom. There it was, the tremor. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked away, lips pressed thin. She'd rehearsed so many versions of this conversation in her head, probably with softer lighting and better clothes. This wasn't the version she wanted. I stood, grabbed my keys. "Where are you going?" "Gym, the one I actually use." I didn't wait for a reply, just walked out the door and left her sitting there, surrounded by the crumbling fantasy she thought she controlled. Because the moment I said his name, she knew. And now, Every floorboard under her feet felt a little less stable, every smile a little more hollow, every password a question mark. She thought she was halfway into a new life. Turns out she was already locked out of the one she had. The hydrangeas were blooming. That was the first thing I noticed that morning. Blue, fat-headed, smug, kind of like Mark, if I'm honest. I was pruning them, gloves on, old clippers creaking in my hand, when a car I didn't recognize pulled up in front of the house. Silver Mercedes, tinted windows, no front plate. It idled for a second too long before the engine shut off. I didn't pause what I was doing. Out stepped Mark B. I'd only seen him in old yearbook photos, blurry Facebook selfies, and that rooftop picture Diane pretended didn't exist. But there he was. Same eyes, same posture, just puffier and overconfident in a way men get when no one's challenged them in years. He wore cologne strong enough to offend the roses, pressed shirt, too white. He looked surprised when he saw me, like he expected Diane to answer the door, like I wasn't supposed to be real. I snipped a brown stem and said without turning, "You lost?" He cleared his throat. Is Diane home?" "She's out." I straightened up, met his eyes. "Coffee?" He hesitated, blinked, then shrugged. "Sure." The kitchen was clean. I'd made sure of that. Not for him, for me. This was my territory, my house, my chessboard. He was just a pawn who didn't know he'd already been captured. I poured 2 cups, sat across from him. No small talk, no bullshit. He sipped once, then set it down like it tasted off. "She said you were checked out," he muttered. I smiled faintly. "That's what you were hoping." His ears flushed. He looked around the room like there might be a hidden camera, or maybe a woman in a silk robe about to declare her undying love and her intentions to start a new life. But it was just me, the husband, the one who didn't scream, didn't throw punches, didn't chase anyone down, just the guy who rearranged the furniture while they were playing pretend. Mark cleared his throat again. "This was probably a mistake." "No, probably about it." He left the coffee half finished, didn't thank me, just walked out, the way people do when they realize they've been invited somewhere not to be welcomed, but to be seen. As the car pulled away, I went upstairs. Diane's things were already packed, not in boxes, too dramatic, just neatly folded, gently arranged into the drawers of the guest room dresser. Her makeup bag sat on top, zipped shut. No message, no threat. She got back an hour later, grocery bags in hand, keys jingling like she was still trying to perform normalcy. She stopped cold when she saw the new lock on the bedroom door. I didn't look up from my book on the porch. "You locked the bedroom?" she asked, trying for casual. Too light, too rehearsed. "No," I said. "I moved out of it. Yours is across the hall now." She blinked. "You're serious?" I marked my page, looked up. Mark stopped by. Her face drained. "What?" "Said you told him I was checked out." I shrugged. "Guess I finally decided to check back in." She didn't respond, just stood there, gripping the grocery bag like it might anchor her to reality. But reality was already shifting under her feet. In that moment, she understood. I wasn't reacting. I was reconstructing. This wasn't a standoff. This was me redrawing the map, and she was no longer on the deed. She walked to the guest room without a word. The door clicked shut, and the house fell silent. It started with silence. Not the kind between 2 people in the kitchen, not the absence of conversation over dinner. This was a wider silence, creeping, stretching, eating at the edges of Diane's life like rot behind the walls. The group chat she used to buzz into every morning, gone quiet. No brunch invites, no "OMG, did you see this?" links, no heart emojis reacting to her stories. Then her Pilates partner stopped responding to texts. Then her old coworker unfriended her on Facebook, and then came the screenshot. It was from Sandra, one of the last friends still talking to her. No preamble, no commentary, just the image. Mark, her Mark, commenting on a woman's vacation photo. "Wish I'd been there. Looks like paradise." The winky face hit harder than it should have. The woman? Someone Diane didn't recognize. Blonde, younger, holding a drink with a pineapple slice. The caption said, "Solo but never lonely." Mark had liked that one too. Diane stared at the screen for a long time. Then she tried to laugh. Couldn't. That night she called Greg's sister, Donna. It rang 6 times, went to voicemail. She left a message, kept it light. "Hey, just checking in. Let's grab lunch soon." No call back. The next day at work, it was the whispers. Whispers always come after the silence. She caught them in the break room. 2 women she'd known for years, pretending not to notice her as they shifted their gossip from loud to low. Wasn't she married? I thought so. Weren't they the ones with the lake house? Maybe she traded in. They snickered, not cruelly, just dismissively, like she was an old episode of a show they didn't bother finishing. She ducked into her office, shut the door, stared at the framed photo on her desk, the one of her and Greg at the lake, both sunburnt and laughing, holding beers and wearing matching dumb t-shirts from a fair. She hadn't thought about that day in years. By the time she clocked out, she felt brittle. Her skin didn't fit right. Her smile was too tight. She just wanted to go home, wash her face, pour a glass of wine, and sink into the couch she hadn't bought but had always claimed. She pulled into the driveway. Something was off. Her key didn't work. Not jammed, not sticky, just didn't turn. She tried again, slower, pressed her shoulder into the door like force might change reality. Nothing. She knocked. No answer. Panic curled in her stomach. She pulled out her phone and called Greg. He answered, calmly. Hey, the lock. Changed it. You changed the locks? You can't just... I can. And I did. It's legal. I have the paperwork. Want me to email it? She stood on the porch holding her purse like it might anchor her. You locked me out of my house. Our house, he corrected. But that changed, remember? Her mouth opened. No sound came. I'll pack your remaining things, he said. You can schedule a pickup through the lawyer. Click. She stood there, stunned, the sky darkening behind her. A neighbor across the street glanced up while watering plants, then looked away quickly. No wave, no nod. The world she thought she could fall back on wasn't there anymore. Not Mark, not the friends who cheered her on with rose and Instagram filters, not the man she thought was too dull to fight back. She wasn't just locked out of the house, she was locked out of the story she thought she was starring in, and the credits were already rolling. She showed up wearing defiance like a raincoat, thin, barely holding, hair done, lipstick sharp, heels too high for gravel. She stood at the edge of the driveway with a face that said she came for war, but her hands wouldn't stop twitching. Greg was already waiting, leaning against the hood of his truck, envelope in hand. No ceremony, no dramatic music, just paper. What's this? She asked, voice tight. He didn't flinch. Closure. She yanked the envelope open like it might bite. 3 pages, stapled, clean, legal, final, divorce papers, filed 2 weeks ago, processed, stamped. She scanned them, eyes darting. You already filed? I did. No discussion? No mediation? Greg folded his arms. We've been separated for 4 months, legally, quietly. You just didn't notice. Her mouth opened, then closed. A half-formed protest died in her throat. I waived alimony, he added, almost casually. You'll keep your car, your jewelry, your guilt. She laughed, short and bitter. You think this makes you the better person? I don't care who wins the story, he said. I'm just done being part of yours. Her fingers tightened around the papers. What about the house? And there it was, the panic, barely hidden under that shell of lipstick and old charm. The house, her anchor, her last illusion of control. Greg smiled, faint, like he was remembering a joke from long ago. You never read the refinance paperwork, did you? She blinked. What? You signed it 6 months ago, while watching that cooking show, remember? I slid it over with the mail. Her jaw locked. I told you it was just to update the mortgage rate. You nodded, didn't ask questions, like always. She flipped to the last page, looked at the signatures, her own name scribbled like a formality. The line above, Borrower 1, Gregory Allen. Below it, the blank, Borrower 2, crossed out. Her name wasn't on the deed. It hadn't been for months. You son of a... No, Greg interrupted. I'm just a man who got tired of being background noise. He stepped back, eyes steady. You can scream. You can spin it however you want. But facts don't need volume. Diane stood there, wind pulling at her hair, holding a paper that stripped away every lie she told herself. About who had the power, about who was asleep at the wheel, about who would fold first. She thought he'd beg. She thought he'd fight. She thought she could walk away when she was ready. Instead, she'd been walked out of her own life. She staggered a step back, breath catching. The raincoat was failing, and the storm was just beginning. Greg turned and walked inside. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. Diane's voice had that brittle edge now, the one that cracks right before it breaks. I want a full forensic breakdown, she told her lawyer, slapping a printed bank statement on the table. Everything. I want to know where it went, when it moved, and how he did it. The lawyer, a quiet woman named Lila with ice blonde hair and a 1,000-yard stare from decades of watching marriages implode, didn't blink. She just folded her hands and nodded. We already ran it, she said calmly. There's not much to look at. What the hell does that mean? Lila turned the monitor toward her. It means everything was above board, legally filed, documented, no hidden withdrawals, no offshore accounts. He moved funds slowly, strategically, months ago, and he did it with your signed consent. Diane leaned in, squinting. That's not possible. I never signed off on… Here, Lila tapped the screen. This one. March 17th. Joint consent transfer. Your signature. Diane stared. It was her name, her handwriting, slanted, quick, initialed in 3 places. She remembered the date now, a Friday night. Greg had said it was mortgage stuff, some routine filing after the refinance. She'd been halfway through a glass of wine, rerunning an old Friends episode on her tablet. He handed her a few sheets clipped together, and she didn't even pause. She signed, didn't read. The air in the office felt thicker suddenly. That transferred nearly 80% of your shared liquid assets into a trust account under his name, Lila added. The remaining funds were applied to house-related debts, also signed off by you. No. Diane shook her head. No, I didn't agree to that. I wouldn't. You did, legally. The paper trail is clean. I can contest it, but we'd lose. Diane slumped into the leather chair, the kind that looked expensive but offered no comfort. Her fingers gripped the armrests like they might offer leverage over her spinning thoughts. She had nothing. The accounts were empty. The trust was locked. The house was his. And the man she'd once called predictable, boring, forgettable had played her like sheet music. Slowly, patiently, flawlessly. How long has he been planning this? She asked, more to herself than anyone. Lila glanced at the files. Judging by the first account move, 9 months, maybe more. 9 months. Before the first rooftop date with Mark, before the late-night book clubs, before the red lipstick came back into rotation, before she had even decided to leave. Greg had already left. He didn't run. He didn't beg. He didn't post selfies with cryptic captions. He walked out in phases, on paper, in quiet legal shifts, in contractual precision so sharp she never felt the cut until the limb was gone. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, opened the text thread with Greg. Empty since the lockout call. She typed, "Can we please talk?" She stared at the blinking cursor. No reply. She tried again. "I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." Still nothing. She called. Voicemail. Back in the office, Lila closed the laptop softly. "Diane, this isn't uncommon. People assume they'll always have time to fix things, or walk things back. But sometimes, he was supposed to be the passive one," Diane muttered. "He wasn't supposed to know how to do this." Lila said nothing, just watched her client unravel, thread by thread. And Diane sat there realizing something worse than loss. She hadn't been left behind. She'd been outplayed by the man who used to ask her how to fix the Wi-Fi. The messages stopped, just like that. No good morning, no winking emojis, no late night thinking about you breadcrumbs, just silence. At first, Diane assumed he was busy. Maybe a client dinner. Maybe his daughter's recital. He had mentioned something vague about that once. She told herself not to spiral, not to overthink it. After all, he knew she was going through a lot. By day 3, her confidence began to crack. She sent a single message. "Are we okay?" Nothing. A day later, "Call me when you can. I miss you." Still nothing. Finally, on a cold Thursday morning, he responded. 3 words. "You said you were handling it. I don't do drama." That was it. No sorry. No, this is hard. Just a quiet exit dressed up in cowardice. A final period. She stared at it for hours. By noon, she was in her car, driving downtown, to Greg's office. He had recently moved into a sleek little space on the 3rd floor of a historic building. Fresh paint, minimalist design, the kind of office where serious people do quiet damage. She buzzed the front door. His assistant looked up, startled, but said nothing, probably briefed in advance. Diane didn't knock, just walked in. Greg was standing at a drafting table, flipping through documents. He didn't look up right away. "Greg," she said, voice too loud, too sharp. He glanced up calmly. "Diane, you think you're clever, don't you?" she snapped. "You just cut me off, like I'm a loose thread." He paused, set the papers down, walked over to a chair and sat down, composed, not indifferent. There was no smugness in his face, no rage, just an unnerving stillness. "You treated our marriage like an option," he said. "I closed it like a contract." Her mouth opened. No sound came. "I didn't ruin anything," he continued. "I just responded to the terms you set." "I never wanted this," she finally blurted. He nodded. "Then maybe you shouldn't have test-driven your future with someone who needed a runway to disappear." That one landed. She actually stepped back, like he'd reached out and touched her with a truth too sharp to hold. I lost everything, she whispered. No, Greg said. You gave it away. You just didn't read the fine print. And that was it. No shouting, no begging, no grand cinematic moment where one of them breaks down in tears. Just her standing in a room that wasn't hers, in front of a man who had become something she no longer understood. She turned and walked out, past the assistant who avoided her eyes, down the stairs that felt too steep, too loud, into a parking lot where her reflection in the car window looked like someone else, someone older, smaller, faded at the edges. Inside the car, she didn't start the engine right away. She sat, hands on the wheel, phone in her lap, no texts, no calls, no future waiting in the wings. The man she'd risked everything for had ghosted her the second things turned real. The man she'd discarded had already rebuilt his life, without her. There was no applause, no lesson, no redemption arc, just the dull, crushing realization that she didn't matter anymore in any of the stories she thought she was starring in. Relevance had left the building, and she didn't even hear the door close. The gala wasn't televised. It didn't need to be. But someone posted a clip on LinkedIn, then another on Facebook. Then the local news shared a still photo, Greg in a charcoal suit, tailored, confident, standing behind a podium with a black banner that read, Central Veterans Mentorship Fund. He was shaking hands with a city councilman, laughing with a retired Marine, posing beside a wall of photos labeled Next Generation Leaders. The camera caught his profile just as his daughter stepped up to speak. She looked poised, older than Diane remembered, wiser maybe. She held the mic like she'd done this before. My dad never made a scene, she said, smiling. He made a choice, and he chose dignity. Applause followed, not explosive, just warm, respectful. Diane watched all of it on her hotel room bed, knees pulled up, robe tied too tight around her waist. She hadn't meant to watch the whole clip, but she did, twice, then again. She hadn't spoken to her daughter in months, not since the fallout. There was no blow-up, no disowning, just a slow fade into silence, missed calls, ignored texts, eventually nothing. The hotel was quiet. She'd been staying there ever since her lease fell through. Bad timing, the landlord said. More likely, bad credit. The new car payment was late too. The freelance work she once romanticized as liberating was less romantic when it came with declined cards and empty emails. The room was small, no photos, no clutter, just beige. When the clip ended, she opened her inbox, still empty. She scrolled past unopened emails from insurance companies, digital coupons, automated birthday greetings. Then she saw it. Greg's final email, sent weeks ago, just one line. Next time, don't mistake silence for weakness. No greeting, no sign-off, just that, delivered like a scalpel. She read it 3 times. The cursor blinked at the bottom like it was waiting for her to reply. She didn't. Because what could she say? She had burned every bridge assuming there'd be another one waiting, another man, another life, another round of applause. Instead, there was a beige hotel room, a mini fridge buzzing in the corner, and a TV remote that barely worked. Greg didn't need to slam doors. He didn't need to post revenge quotes or tell his side. He just stopped showing up. That was the final cut. Not fury, not cruelty, absence. She wasn't hated. She was forgotten. The world moved on, and Greg moved forward, with grace, with discipline, with the kind of quiet strength she once mocked in favor of drama. Outside the hotel window, rain tapped against the glass, slow, steady, familiar. And Diane sat in the dark, realizing the punishment was never rage. It was being erased.